And we're out and about again, Roisin. We're here in the town of Thurles. We're continuing our travels, talking to various different politicians across Tipperary. And this evening we'll be interviewing Councillor Jim Ryan.
And there's Paul, we're out and about, and we haven't been up at the door in the last couple of months, but we are out and about.
Yeah, exactly. And it's great to be able to get out and about and see these different towns across the country and get a real sense of what the issues are on the ground.
Yeah, and that's what's important, because a lot of people, politics is all local politics, and it's all about, everyone thinks all national. Well, you know what? You have to talk to the local county councillors who are the boots on the ground and talking to everybody at grassroots level.
Absolutely, and Councillor Ryan, who we'll be interviewing in a little while, he's a public representative since 1999, so he's got plenty of experience, and he just fell short of winning a seat in the new North Tipperary constituency. Ryan O'Mara of Fianna Fáil getting the last seat, who we interviewed there a few weeks ago.
Down in Nina.
Yep, which wouldn't be 100 miles from ourselves here in Thurles.
No, Thurles is just down the road from Kilkenny, and with the constituency in the northwest Kilkenny. I always get mixed up.
Exactly.
What is it? The northwest Kilkenny.
Kilkenny, northwest of the county is in the North Tipperary constituency. So Jim and other politicians at the last general election, they were knocking on doors in Freshford and Tullaroan, and be interested to see what Jim's thoughts were on having to canvass in another county.
Well, Paul, let's go in and find out.
Let's. And you're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Paul Brophy, and my colleague Roisin is on camera duties and doing a great job as always. And we're delighted to be joined by independent councillor on Tipperary County Council for the Thurles electoral area, Councillor Jim Ryan. Jim, last time we spoke, it was in the run-up to the general election. You're here in Thurles working on the ground. What are you hearing and feeling when you're knocking on doors, when you're going down the high streets and the side streets and the local villages kind of that surround Thurles?
Yeah, look, I'm 26 years a councillor. As you correctly say, so I was first elected in 1999, and I've always found it to be an honour and a privilege, to be elected by my fellow constituents here in the Thurles area. I love being a councillor, and I've always loved being a councillor. It's a tough job, I have to say, particularly when the district council and the town councils were abolished. I think the workload on councillors nowadays is phenomenal. We're basically doing the work of a TD, but being paid as a county councillor, and it's a tough life being a county councillor, because you have to do all the secretarial work yourself. I mean, I answer the phone, I write letters, I make representations, I have to research, issue statements, go to council meetings, and everything is done by myself, whereas obviously the TDs have parliamentary assistants and secretaries to do all that work for them. But look, it is getting busier, it is getting tougher. Powers have been taken away from councillors down through the years, which in my viewpoint has been a national scandal to let happen. I've always said the abolition of town councils was one of the biggest mistakes that any government has ever made in the history of this country. During my election campaign, actually in general election campaign, one of my priorities was, if I was elected, to get the town councils re-established across the country. I have heard on the grapevine that there is talks that possibly it may happen, but not to the same level I was there previously. But look, you asked the question, what am I hearing on the ground? I mean, how long have you? Because people are frustrated out there. The biggest, I suppose, and most busiest area in my line of work as a county councillor is housing. There's no doubt about it. Every day I have people coming into my office here in Thurles, either looking to get on the councillor waiting list, trying to get a mortgage, trying to get a house to rent in Thurles, just somewhere to live. And unfortunately, there's an awful lot of people out there who are in a crisis situation, not being looked after. And it's a sad reflection of our society that we have a government aflush with money, billions of euros in surplus in budget after budget. And yet, for such a small country, they just can't seem to tackle the housing crisis in Ireland. And it's just, the mind boggles, you know what I mean, as regards why they just cannot solve this problem.
And if we were to take the Thurles electoral area as an example, how are you faring in comparison to other parts of the county, or as, let's say, Tipperary is faring as a whole as regards meeting their targets as regards building of public housing?
Yeah, well, at the moment in Thurles, there's over, I think at the last time there was 427 people on the council waiting list looking for a house in Thurles. The council, in fairness to them, we did construct a new housing estate very close to where I live, actually, doing a villain, 27 houses. They constructed, I think, 22 houses in 2 Mile Burris village, a couple of miles outside of town here. But we need an awful lot more than that. And at the moment, there is 64 social houses being built in Thurles. It was originally a private development, but one of the social housing bodies went in and purchased all the houses. So that's been a major boost, knowing that 64 of those houses are now going to be given to people on the waiting list. So it's a big help. Obviously, it's not enough. And I think more money needs to be invested and given to the county councils to purchase land. Like in Thurles, there is no public lands available. All the public lands the council have are now gone at this stage. They need to purchase more lands, more zoned lands, serviceable lands, and be given the money to do so, and then obviously to construct them as soon as possible. But at the moment, I would be concerned for people in Thurles regarding housing, because the fact that we have 2 third level colleges, we have over 1,000 third level students in Thurles at the moment that are crying out for accommodation, and the private sector they're in dreamland. Anybody who wants a private house in Thurles or a second house that's renting, they can ask for whatever they want regarding rent, because of the students, because of the crisis of people waiting to try and get a house to rent in the town. So there's a huge shortage of housing in Thurles, so that's a big problem for the town.
That is, and Roisin and I, we on the Irish Political Roundup, we've been covering water infrastructure and the difficulties that's causing as regards the lack of wastewater treatment plants is holding up, the construction of houses across the country. Are you experiencing similar problems with regards to water infrastructure and
just to give
delivery of housing?
Just an example, in Thurles again, late last year, there was a planning application in for over 120 houses, just on the Borden and One Road here in Thurles, and it got turned down because of the lack of sewerage infrastructure and public water infrastructure. And that was a huge blow to Thurles, because we need houses like that to be built. And again, it's a crying shame where we have a developer who was willing to develop over 120 houses in the town, and because of a lack of infrastructure by both Irish Water and Tipperary County Council previous to that, unfortunately that developer was not able to go ahead and build those houses, which he had the finance to do so. So it was very disappointing to hear that. A lot of people in Thurles were really upset over the fact that, and couldn't understand how potentially over 120 houses that would have been made available to people renting privately or students, wherever the case may be, that it was refused planning permission on the basis that there wasn't the adequate or appropriate infrastructure facilities such as sewage and water. So that's just a disgrace as far as I'm concerned. And
as regards the whole concept Irish Water, we've had lots of discussions in the last while. Should Irish Water remain? Should it be broken up? Should it go back to should the delivery of water infrastructure go back to our local councils? What are your thoughts on that? Because it's something, if we don't fix this now, it's going to be very difficult to deliver the houses that are needed across the country.
Yeah, well, what really drives me mad and frustrates me is when you hear all the political parties, every one of them do it, opposition, government parties, saying we're going to build 30,000 houses or 50,000 houses. They'll never say how they're going to build them, because I'm after giving you an example there. 120 houses in Thurles refused last year because of a lack of infrastructure. So you can say you're going to build 30,000 or 50,000 houses. It's easy to say that, but to deliver them is a different kettle of fish. And unless you have the proper infrastructure, and it just won't happen. And Irish Water, I never supported it. Never liked the idea of taking something like that away from the local authorities, who had been the people that looked after the water and storage facilities here in Tipperary and every county in the country for over a century. And just to take that away from them with a stroke of a pen by Phil Hogan at the time, again, has proven to be an absolute disaster. And the proof's in the pudding. Here in Thurles, as I said, those 120 houses were refused. But also, more disgracefully, from an environmental aspect, we have a beautiful river shore. And I'm sure you passed it on many occasions going to action here in Thurles, flowing through the town centre. Not many towns in Ireland or cities in Ireland have a river going through the town centre. And every time it rains heavy in this town, because of the combined piping system we have in Thurles, the combined underground piping system, whereby you have raw sewage and rainwater going through the same pipe, that during times of heavy rainfall, the pipes are so narrow that it cannot take the combination of sewage and rainwater. And what happens is there's a pumping station at the back of the shopping centre here in Thurles, and basically that switches on when there's heavy rainfall, and it just pumps whatever is in the pipes at that time, which is a combination of rainwater, whatever dirt is on the streets in Thurles, and more appallingly, raw sewage is then pumped into the River Shore here in Thurles. And that's been let happen for years now at this stage. And at our last county council meeting, I asked for an update in relation to it, and the Director of Services said they've no update from Irish Water as regards how they're going to solve it.
And if it is to be solved, does that require the construction of a new water treatment plant?
No, it just basically means that the underground piping system needs to be made more modernised. The sewerage and the rainwater need to be separated. When the Liberty Square was being redeveloped there 3 or 4 years ago, they put in these underground pipes, which were huge. People were asking, why in the name of God are they putting pipes that underground? But it's to allow and to make sure that when it is raining, that the underground system can take it, that doesn't have to be pumped into the river here in Thurles. But unfortunately, every street in Thurles has to be ripped up and new pipes have to be put in. It'll take years to do it, a huge amount of work. But unfortunately, there's no light at the end of the tunnel because we haven't been told whether or not Irish Water are going to go ahead with that or not.
Wow, that
sounds
like a big project.
Worrying. Yeah, absolutely, but it should have been done years ago, and it hasn't been. And again, Thurles neglected, left behind. That's just another typical example of why Thurles has been underrepresented in the Dáil down through the years. As far as I'm concerned, we have problems. I could again list them off here tonight, but that's just one typical example of where Thurles has been let down very badly.
Councillor Jim Ryan, thanks a million for taking the time to chat to us here on the Irish Political Roundup. Both Roisin and myself are delighted to be invited down to talk to you here in your office about all the things that are happening here in Thurles, and hopefully we'll see you on in the next general elections as well.
Look, thank you very much for coming. Delighted to have you, and it's important to get the message across there, and it's also important that that people realise that they have someone there that they can depend on and someone that represents them. So hopefully that's what people see in me anyway.